Hey everybody, welcome to Example of Play, known for strategy, tactics, and more. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it now. In this video, we're going to look at a new update and some news for Armored Brigade II, the real-time strategy war game focused on Cold War conflict. Came out on Southern's website last year in sort of a pseudo early access as they continue to update the game before it came out on Steam. And so this week we got some big news. So the Steam release is going to be April 8th. And the game also got a patch that is pretty robust. It adds a lot of new features, fixes some things, adds some new content. So we'll pop over to Southern's press release just to go down that, and then we'll show off some of the stuff in game. Here we have a Finnish Stug 3 on the advance. The Finns got a lot of new unit models, so I figured we'd open with them in action here against the Soviets. All right, so here's the official press release from Matrix Games. We'll run through it, just make sure I get all the details right. Then we'll switch back to the game to see a little bit of this stuff in action. So the big announcement is that this game is finally coming to Steam on April 8th. You've been able to buy it directly from Southern Matrix Games for several months now, and the game is very playable, but they are treating it as kind of like a soft launch, sort of an early access while they continue developing it. And then whenever they come over to Steam, that's going to be kind of the more feature complete release version that they want to push out to the masses. And so that's going to be April 8th. And then to that end of updating the game and continuing development, it comes with this patch version 1.583 that actually does quite a bit of different things for the game. And some of it's featured here, and then there's a full list at the bottom. But so one of the updates is that the Finnish Army have got a lot of their vehicle models updated. As we saw, they have some like World War II, post-World War II stuff in their arsenal well into the Cold War, to include like the Stug 3, which we saw there in the opening was still getting the job done. They also have a lot of Soviet equipment like the T-55, T-72, that sort of stuff later on. And then another faction that received some love was West Germany. They got a lot of their infantry formations were updated to be a little more specialized and broken out into their historical different types of infantry units and less generic. So they got the Gebersjägers, however you say that, Pioneers, Fallschirmjägers all have their own distinct units now that you can select from. They got different ways for them to be mobilized. So like in trucks and vehicles, a little more specific to the period, less generic. They also added the FXAA, so a little bit better graphics improvement there, new fire and smoke effects, more textures for buildings, and then also a black and white night vision mode, so like thermal imaging mode. And you can go in there in the game, select if you want it to be like off or white, black, black, white, whichever way, versus before it just had like the green night vision mode. Not really a necessary thing, but a fun feature to have. And for some maps, if you're playing at night, it does make it a little easier to see where everything is, if you so choose to turn that on, which we'll show it off here in a minute. And then they also added a whole bunch of other little updates here. So I kind of ran through some of them, and some interesting ones are in here. So besides just tweaking some vehicles, adding a few here and there, they did add some new features. So this implement return fire, so units will suppress undetected enemies by firing back at suspected positions. This is actually, I'm surprised they didn't feature this up there, because this seems like an actual like gameplay change, where before units would really only fire back when they spotted an enemy unit. Sometimes you get like a little ring showing you that like they see a muzzle flash somewhere, but they don't know where the enemy unit actually is. But now they will fire into suspected enemy positions that fire's coming from, even if they haven't spotted the enemy entirely there. So that definitely changes the gameplay a little bit, because in Armored Brigade, unlike combat mission, you can't target specific areas. You can't tell units what to shoot at for the most part. You have to just let them engage on their own. And so it could be really frustrating if like you knew where an enemy unit was and you couldn't tell your units to shoot there. Now, if they're taking fire from like a building, they'll actually return fire without having to spot the enemy unit. They'll just know they're being shot at from that building, or think they are, as we'll see. They updated the battle replay to use the 3D map, where before you could only watch like on the little 2D map, the icons moving around. Now you can watch still just the icons moving around, but on the 3D map. So that's nice. They added, FXAA, so a little bit better graphics there. And they changed just the way some of the scripting works, the way some of the AI works a little bit. Fire and smoke has been improved. Fence draw distance. So, well, some little stuff here. But there was also some new content. So they added 3 new scenarios. They updated a scenario. They pulled a couple scenarios from Armored Brigade 1. These both have Finland in them, so kind of going with this patch little Finnish theme to it. And then also they added this on Armored Brigade 1 dynamic campaign, which follows up one of these standalone scenarios. But in that one, you're playing as the Soviets, not the Finns. And then adjusted some things on some other ones, did a few little UI updates. So a lot of little stuff, some new content, some new features, at least a couple things that kind of change how the game plays, and also just overall a lot of improvements. So exciting to see that this game is being developed into not just polishing, but like adding new stuff to the game and improving it with this patch. So I'm really excited about that. And now let's switch back to the game just to kind of see a little bit of this in action. All right, so to show off some of that stuff we were just talking about, this is one of the new scenarios. This is Winter Desolation. You're playing as the Finns against the Soviets. And in this scenario, it's kind of a cool setup. You are a player unit, so you're a T-55. Your platoon has been depleted and is trying to hold this intersection over here. And your objective is just survive, just keep that platoon alive, specifically your player unit. And to do that, you have to bring in some mechanized infantry. They start way over here. You got to rush them to the middle to intercept this big Soviet force that's moving through. And then, of course, a twist on top of that is that it's at night. And this is fairly early Cold War, so most of your units don't have night vision equipment, and they can't see very far. But likewise goes for the Soviets. So you've got a bunch of mortars to fire illumination rounds. So it is a cool little scenario. It's from Armored Brigade 1. They've brought it forward with this patch into the new game. But hopefully it'll give us a chance to see some of those new features, like the units firing at suspected enemy positions when they can't actually spot them, which makes a lot of sense for a nighttime mission. Should be a lot of blind firing into suspected positions. So right here, we've got a nice little moment. We've got this infantry squad. They've got a T-55 in their sights that hasn't spotted them yet, but they're about to shoot at it. So we'll see what happens. All right, and then before we hit resume, I'm going to... I've got some mortars back here set up to fire illumination rounds. So I'm going to have them fire just so we can see the lighting. If you haven't ever played a night mission, the illumination rounds are pretty cool and realistic. If your guys don't have night vision, they need some way to see the enemy out there. We'll hit resume, see what happens. All right, so the infantry squad, they fire off a rocket at this T-55, and then it starts shooting. But instead of shooting at them, it's shooting at this house next to them because it doesn't know exactly where they are. But now it stopped, so maybe it has spotted them. Nope, still shooting there. So I think that demonstrates that new feature pretty nicely and how it adds some immersion and realism of units not waiting till they fully spot something to fire back, but spotting at where they think it's coming from. We can try out the thermal vision. So here it's got objects are white hot. You can also make it where things are black hot, whichever you prefer. Just got to go in the options to change that. That's mostly just for fun, but it's also can be useful sometimes to see things. Now we might have illuminated our own guys just as much as them. Another new feature I don't think I mentioned on the list was that they added degree details. So whenever a vehicle takes a hit, it now shows you the angle of the hit. So giving you a little more information like in Combat Mission and some other ones to show off, the calculation that's going on those hits, is including like the exact angle that the armor's being hit at. I was hoping we would maybe knock out a vehicle so we could see some of the new fire effects. Here, these wrecks are smoking. So the updates included, smoke and fire effects, and then just some engine updates to make things a little smoother, render from a little further away. Oh, there they hit it, but did not damage it. Poor guys. Okay, there. So that vehicle got destroyed and is on fire. And so this game, of course, is never going to be like Warno or Broken Arrow. It's not that kind of graphical powerhouse, but for what it's calculating, what it's rendering, like the huge battlefields, and that can run perfectly smooth no matter how big a battle you make. You basically have to like max things out to slow the game down at all. and even then, it's still perfectly playable. But huge battles with multiple companies of units on the field run perfectly smooth in this engine. So that's kind of the trade-off for the low graphics. But every little update helps. It makes it look nicer. Now, I don't want to drag this video on longer than I need to. I'll probably do a full gameplay video of one of the new scenarios at some point. But I was excited for this update, hearing that it's finally come to Steam, where it'll get way more eyes on it, probably get more mods coming, all that kind of stuff, more players. And I know some of my previous videos on the game have been really popular, so I know you guys out there are interested in it, and figured you'd appreciate hearing about the patch and about the Steam release date coming up. So be sure hit that like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to get more Armor Brigade content in the future. Oh, perfect. That T-55, I don't know, it thought something was like back behind it. It was shooting, I don't know what was going on, but it got confused. It was shooting back behind it, and then took a round to the rear and blew up real good. So that is a perfect note to end on. The Finns sending the Soviets packing as best they can. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day.